Please get a motion to go back into regular session. Okay, Monica moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor? Okay, back to regular session. Thank you, everybody. So first, Selectmen's report, three quick items. One of them is I had a call with the Department of Transportation last week with members from Westcog. Purpose of that call was to get an update on progress with regard to the quiet zone. So you'll recall that this is an effort to see about silencing the sounding of Metro North train horns on the New Canaan branch line at intersections or crossings, not at the stations themselves, but just the crossings. And that effort's been underway for a while. In fact, it's coming up on a year in October that we presented the findings of a Westcog study about how we might proceed with a quiet zone. Subsequent to that study, the Department of Transportation let us know that they require as a next step a full diagnostic of all of the intersections in question. And so what we teed up with them last spring was a need to get all three of the regulatory bodies that are relevant to this, so not just CONDOT, but also Metro North, as well as the Federal Railroad Administration. So we spoke with all of them, and there's been a delay in them coming together on what the exact scope of this diagnostic needs to be, because I made it clear to everybody that we needed to do this one time, and that coming out of that, we'd have not only a clear sense of the study, but once the study's completed, we'd have all the information needed to be able to both establish what's required to create the quiet zone, and importantly, what it's all going to cost. So they all stacked hands and said yes, but because of vacations and medical leaves for a couple of key people, they have not pulled all this together. So the purpose of the call last week was to try to get all that back on track. I felt reasonably good about it. They're going to get back to us probably after Labor Day with a sense of what the quiet zone diagnostic will require. And I will stay on top of all that, but it's certainly been delayed more than I wanted. I'll be sending out a note by email to a variety of folks who are tracking this and have an interest in having the quiet zone put in place. But I just wanted to provide that brief update in this session. Second thing is Jennifer and I have been working on this Zoom extension called Zoom Webinar, which allows us to manage meetings like we're doing now, where all of us are panelist participants versus the public, which would be mere participants in the meeting and would not be able to interact with us unless we accept them into the meeting as panelists. The idea there was to try and minimize the potential for Zoom bombs and things of that nature. Our conclusion is that because of the way we do public comment and some other things, that we're not going to really be able to take advantage of what Zoom Webinar has to offer. And it's pretty expensive to have that license extension. And so what I think we're going to do is go back to managing it, quote, by hand, if you will. And I think the key for that is going to be to come up with a way for us to have someone monitoring the call. I don't think it makes sense for Jennifer to do that since she has to be tuned into the meeting and has to pay close attention to that, but we're going to give that some thought. One thing that I would like to consider at the next meeting is what Cadence all of you want. Hello, Mike, how are you? Okay, get a sense for what you guys want at the next meeting, or at our meetings once we pick back up in September. We had gone to one in-person meeting and one Zoom meeting per month in the past for our two required meetings. I would note that the Board of Education, I'm hearing, is considering going back to all in-person meetings and no meetings by Zoom and no hybrid meetings, just to get back to more something in person. But give that some thought in terms of what you all would like to do. I'm kind of flexible on this point. I get the value of in-person meetings and having Zoom meetings in the summer, but anyway, I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on it. If we're all in person, then the Zoom bombing problem is obviously not going to be an issue. So give that some thought. I'll stick that on the agenda for next week, and we'll decide kind of as a group how we'd like to manage our meetings going forward. Last one is a question. So Alicia Sillers, as you know, passed on, and we have a vacancy in terms of our youth services director. The plan right now is that we would have that position fold into Parks and Rec and report to Jen Fava and just have youth services as part of Parks and Recreation. But Jennifer, you may want to build on this, but from our meeting today, there was a sense that we needed to do some reshuffling of roles and responsibilities for that role. And one of the questions actually was, what about some of the mental wellness and health aspects of youth services? That's actually built in to the job description as it stands currently. And it struck me that Marcy and Sarah, given your work on Thriving with Youth Task Force and Mental Health Task Force, that maybe one of you, or both of you even, might want to collaborate with Jennifer and Jen Fava in the restructuring of that role so we can slot it right in and have it be a productive part of the Parks and Rec team. I say that because we also have a lot of overlap. There's, as I said, the Mental Health Task Force, the Thriving Youth Task Force, the Darien Depot. There's lots of players who are interested in the well-being, the mental health well-being of our youth, and having your voices, if you're interested in helping Jen and Jen work on this, might help us. So comments, reactions?
I'd be honored.
Okay. Marcy, what do you say?
I agree. I'd be honored. And I think it's a very important role in town. So I'd like to make sure that we have it filled by somebody who's incredibly engaged with that community.
100%.
Yeah. So if you guys can help with that and also help with just the shaping of that role, particularly versus these other groups, so that it kind of fits in an integrated way with less overlap or confusion as to who's supposed to be doing what, particularly with regard to the depot, that would be great. I'll send out an email about that tomorrow, just connecting you with Jen and let you guys pick it up from there, but I appreciate you doing that. Other than that, that is it for me. So tomorrow I'm actually going up to Waterford, Connecticut, and with a few other officials, I have a tour of the Millstone Nuclear Power Plant, and I will report on that at the next meeting. But I'm looking forward to seeing. I wanted to learn more about the role nuclear power plays in the state of Connecticut, and I will be a lot better informed at our meeting in 2 weeks, and I'll report on that then. So that's it from me. Any questions for me? Outstanding. Okay. So next up is board liaison reports. Sarah, I'll start with you.
Happy to. I don't have much of an update. Our next meeting is this coming Wednesday at 6 p.m. And right now things are moving along as far as the building is going and the sites. If you have had a chance to drive by, it's very exciting. They're working very hard and they're trying to get everything done. The school's starting again soon. So I know the paving work at Hindley just finished up for the parking lot and the driveway. So I know they're getting ready for the kids to come back, which we're ready to shift to, I think it's phase 2A, if I remember correctly.
Terrific. All right. I do drive by those sites, and honestly, they're different every week. So if you haven't seen them in a while, you'll be amazed at how much progress they're making.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, and you guys, everybody, for working on that. Let's see. Monica.
Well, we have quite a few Great Island items on the agenda, but I will just say that 23A work has picked up. So they are adhering to no residents, no walking on the island during the day now. There was a little bit of leeway there, but they're asking residents to visit the island from 4 o'clock until dusk during the week. And then on the weekend, it's the usual hours. That's it.
Monica, is there an estimate when that work should be done?
You know, I don't have as today an estimate, but the general estimate was getting the paving work done by the end of the year and getting the landscape work done in the spring.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Great. Thank you. Marcy.
Mental Health Task Force has not met yet this summer, but we are scheduled to meet in September. So I'll get an update for us probably in a month or so.
Okay, fantastic. And last but not least, Mr. Burke.
Similarly, Blight does not meet in August. We will meet in September, and I will have an update then.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Let's see, Jennifer, has anyone signed up for public comments this evening?
Yes, we have heard from Cheryl Russell, Alexis Sweet, and Ena Ghaznavi that they would like to speak. And if anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand and we will work down the list. Once you raise your hand, I will grant you permission to talk. You will not be able to turn on a camera, but you'll be able to speak and unmute yourself.
Okay, I'll let you manage that. However you want to go for public comments, that'd be great.
All right, we'll start with Cheryl Russell. And Cheryl, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Cheryl, can you unmute yourself, Cheryl, and click unmute? Can we unmute her? Up there it is. Cheryl, are
There we
you
go.
there? Hi, Cheryl, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Cheryl. Hi, how are you?
Oh, good. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Anyway, good evening, everybody. Hope you're having a good summer. I know tonight, I had to write this down so I didn't mess up. I know tonight is the start of a discussion of the events on Great Island. And I have ideas for a wedding on Great Island. And I know, these are just some of my thoughts at this time. I know it's early in the process. But I'm concerned about, Great Island is a fabulous place for weddings and picture taking with all the water views, the lighthouse, the boats at Ziegler's Cove, and I think we, the town, could allow just that, a wedding and picture taking. At Pear Tree, we have numerous weddings in the gazebo, on the sand. We have surprise engagements. We've had picture taking where the whole wedding party has come down in the limousines. It's beautiful. And it's fabulous, just like Great Island could be. Is, as you've mentioned, the neighbors, and we have to recognize that there's a lot of neighbors around Great Island. And music in a reception travels very loudly over water. So I'm very concerned about that. And I also think that a reception could last there at night. Then there's the setup of the tents and the chairs and the flowers and the hoopla and everything else that goes along, and the trucks doing all that. That could take the day before the wedding, the day of the wedding, and the day after the wedding. So that could be 3 days, maybe 4, because sometimes tents go up 2 days before a wedding. And that could take, and people wanting to use Great Island. So it depends on where you decide to have this ceremony and / possibly reception, how much land and how much area will be taken away from the people. I'm sure you have already discussed and looked into the liability. That's also a concern of some of the residents in town. And or after the reception. And I would appreciate you all taking this into consideration during your discussions on this. I have your event policy that you have in your agenda tonight. I think this is a great starting place. I think that you have covered just about everything on this piece of paper, but I don't think that this is wedding or a wedding reception, because right away you have sunrise to sunset and no amplified sound. So there goes a reception right there. So you'd have to have a whole new policy printed up for a wedding and reception. I like the fact that you're going through with getting people on the island. These people by bus or the 3 housing.
Cheryl, I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap it up. You're past 3 minutes for your comment period this
Oh, I'm
evening.
sorry. I was trying to time myself today. So anyway, I'm glad that we're moving forward, but I hope that you consider some of my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, Jennifer, who's up next?
All right, next up will be Alexis Sweet. And Alexis, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hi, did that work?
It did.
Oh.
You're recognized for 3 minutes, Alexis. Thanks.
Okay. Alexis Sweet, 20 Beverly Place. Before there's any real discussion of event policy tonight, this board needs to say it plainly. Great Island is not a park. It's a municipal parcel smack in the middle of a residential zone. And creating a policy doesn't magically make events or other intensified uses legal. A town policy, no matter how thoughtful or well-intentioned, carries no legal authority on its own. It's the zoning code that governs what is allowed and what formal process must be followed to approve uses like events. Zoning is where the actual legal protections for residents and neighborhoods are established. To understand why zoning regulations are so essential, just imagine what could happen without the checks and balances in the regulations that they provide. A future Board of Selectmen could walk in with a completely different vision for Great Island, say weddings every weekend, major fundraisers, et cetera, and they could change the policy overnight. No notice, no hearing, no input from neighbors. That's not an exaggeration, actually, but it is why zoning exists. Zoning ensures stability, predictability, and most importantly, a public process before the character of a neighborhood is altered. I hope this board will be clear tonight and talk about how it envisions events and other intensified uses working in relation to zoning compliance. Will the town seek a blanket special permit, by example, with the event policy baked in like it did for Highland Farm? Or will each individual event be subject to the special permit process as zoning currently requires? Or is the town planning to pursue creating a brand new zone for Great Island, which would be a complex process that is by no means guaranteed? We need these answers now because asking the public to weigh in on policy without knowing how it connects to the law is a little bit backwards. Or maybe the town is just assuming it will automatically get the approvals it needs. The outline in tonight's agenda packet reads a little bit like the town wants to reinvent Great Island as a kind of off-the-books park and rec outpost with the Board of Selectmen playing gatekeeper. I don't see how that governance structure exists under the law currently. Again, it's not a park, and under current zoning, pretty much nothing outside of passive recreation is legal without a special permit from planning and zoning. Even if you guys wanted to move your offices to the island, you'd need a special permit. I mentioned Highland Farm earlier. That's also not a park. It too is a municipal property in a residential zone. And for event uses there, the town sought and received a special permit approval for very limited town and nonprofit sponsored events, no private weddings or rentals. So as you dive into the discussion later tonight, I respectfully ask, please don't sweep zoning compliance considerations under the rug or suggest that it's a discussion for down the road. Acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is unless and until a special permit is granted by the Planning and Zoning Commission, no events or intensified uses, whether private or public, can legally take place on Great Island. The law is clear and the town is not exempt from following the zoning regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Jennifer, who's next?
Ena Ghaznavi. And all right, Ena, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, Ena, you there?
Yep, good evening.
Sure.
Ena Ghaznavi, a resident 33 Beverly Place. I'm speaking today to make a just simple but urgent point. It's really premature for the town of Darien to plan or allow any events on Great Island until there's an ecological study done. Great Island is not just a parcel of land. It's one of the last open ecological important coastal areas in Connecticut. Its wetlands, tidal marshes, meadows, woodlands, they support a remarkably diverse wildlife, including migratory birds, shellfish beds, sensitive shoreline species. The diverse wildlife and habitats are important for Great Island's ecosystem. They're fragile, and once disturbed, they cannot easily be restored. Events bring with them noise, lighting, traffic, people, dogs. Each of these had documented impacts on wildlife. Studies from the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection have shown that these types of repeated disturbances can cause birds to abandon nesting sites, fish to leave shallow feeding grounds, and plants to decline. The town shouldn't risk those consequences without first understanding exactly what is at stake. Other Connecticut towns, such as Westport and Greenwich, have recognized this by beginning their park planning with ecological inventories and resource assessments. Darien should do no less for Great Island, which is arguably the crown jewel of this town's open space. The responsible forward-looking step is clear before Darien schedules a single event, before it commits to programming of any kind, it must have the ecological data. That study will allow the town to plan safeguards of the irreplaceable natural assets that this town has been entrusted with. Events can wait, wildlife cannot. Let's ensure that preservation and protection come first so that Great Island remains a sanctuary for both nature and residents for generations to come. As a final note, I'll be sending a file to board members of the species I've been documenting with photos from just one habitat on the island. And I hope this will provide a better understanding of the points I've made today and of the resident wildlife and their significance to the island. Thank you.
Thank you, Ena. Jennifer, anyone else? I see
One more, we have Sabel Foster, who has her hand up, and all right, Sabel, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, I'm actually Sabel Steuert. It's back to my
sorry.
maiden name. It's not your fault. I'm at 25 Old Farm Road, and I don't have anything really new to add, but I do want to second all of the eloquent comments that were made before me. I had a list of 3 things written down, but they've all been covered by those that came before me. I guess I did have one question, which maybe in the literature is obvious, but what is the urgency of creating a plan right now? It feels to me like the town needs to rush to make money to make the numbers work. And I sit back and I think that, again, a complete environmental study before anything else is decided would be extremely helpful and save a lot of missteps, like, T-shirts and other things that were invested in. But I do applaud all of the time and effort that everyone has put into this, and I know everyone's hearts are in the right place. It's just we need to think of the big picture. That's really all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Jennifer, anyone else for public comment?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. All right. New business. So first item on new business is to extend the mission of the Darien Affordable Housing Trust Fund Commission. So the reason for bringing this up is that the trust fund is actually like an advisory board in the sense that it has a 1-year charter, and the trust fund has actually been relatively dormant for a while for no other reason than they just have not had a lot of money in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. But by the end of the year, it's expected that we'll have about $1.6 million in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And so it's time to just resurrect that group and to engage with them in terms of what might be next in terms of an investment of the funds in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Just to review, the members of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, according to the ordinance setting this up, are as follows. The 5 members are the chairman of the Board of Finance, the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the chairman of the Human Services Commission, which I'll get to in a minute, the chairman of Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee for the RTM, and a member of the public at large who has expertise in housing. So right now, Jim Palin, Steve Ovani, as Board of Finance and Planning and Zoning chairs, they're on that committee. We do not currently have a Human Services Commission. It's chartered, but we don't have that as an active commission at the moment. As I mentioned before, we're rethinking some of our boards and commissions, and that has a fair bit of overlap with some others. Both Mindy Chambrelli and Kevin Cunningham are rethinking the charter for that committee. And so as soon as we have that, we'll be able to think about what's next. But currently, that commission is vacant and we don't have a chair to serve on this group. And then Amy Zavatakis would be on there representing the RTM. And our current civilian is Sam Fuller, who is a developer. I had a call with him last week. He is very knowledgeable and very well informed about all of this. So I'm thankful for his efforts in chairing this committee. But we'll be meeting with them, and I'm sure they'll start to have public meetings at some point to talk about all this. Just as a review, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, it is an advisory commission, and anything they come up with would be a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And if we were to authorize an expenditure from that, it would go through our normal channels, which is Board of Finance review, and then of course an RTM vote for an appropriation. So that's where we are on that. Jennifer, anything to add on affordable housing?
The only thing I would add is that technically, because it is appointed as an advisory committee, we do need to extend their mission every 12 months. So if this continues on beyond 12 months, we would need to do that again.
Yeah, and we will. One of our agenda items in December will be to refresh all of our advisory board appointments, charters, all of that stuff, and we'll make sure that that's something part of our December agenda every year. In any case, that's where we are. Other questions? Okay. Could I please get a motion to extend the mission of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to the term ending on December 31st, 2025? Okay, Mike moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor? Okay, terrific. Let's take care of all that. Okay, next up is to discuss and take action to approve the settlement of a tax appeal, which we discussed in executive session this evening. Could I please get a motion to approve the proposed settlement for the Enrico Zordan and Shari Gialli property at 232 West Avenue with an original valuation of the land and building at $1,044,200 and a proposed settlement of $950,000. Okay, Sarah moves. Marcy seconds, all in favor? Okay, thank you. So tax appeal. Third new business item, as you probably saw in the newsletter for the town last week, Altice has done a renumbering of their channels. And so it's no longer TV 79 for the Darien TV station, it's TV 1031. And I'm sure the team tried for a long time to come up with something that was short or pithy or maybe a jingle. It just doesn't roll off the tongue like TV 79. So they would like to change their designation to just Darien TV. And they have tried to create a new brand or logo, which Marcy included in the newsletter last week. And I think it looks terrific. They did a nice job, and I'm appreciative of that. But I can understand the need to go ahead and change this to a TV 79, a Darien TV advisory board. So I think what we need to do here is to just vote to rename the Darien TV 79 advisory board to the Darien TV advisory board. Anybody have any questions or comments on that? Sarah?
Just, we hadn't seen anything from them. I just want to make sure that this was the designation exactly that they were looking for.
It is. And in fact, like I said, I think it was in the newsletter last week. And if not, I'm going to forward around. It's just their blue logo with Darien TV in the middle of it. It
all
looks
good.
So,
Thank you.
Other questions?
Hey, John. Yeah, I'm off mute. Darien, Illinois, or I forget how they pronounce it differently, but I'm sure Jim checked to make sure that they don't happen to already have that, right?
I will check with Jim. I do not know the answer to that question. I will check. Thank you. That's a very good point. Darien, Illinois. Might be able to find out while we're sitting here. So subject to that, if you let's go ahead and vote this change, subject to confirming that there's no conflict with anything in Darien, Illinois, or any other town that's named Darien. Could I get a motion to approve the name change of the Darien TV 79 Advisory Board to the Darien TV Advisory Board, subject to ensuring there's no conflict with another Darien, a town of Darien in the United States. Monica moves, Mike seconds. All in favor? Great, thank you. I will check on that, Monica, thank you. Old business update on Norton Heights development. That's been an agenda item for a month or so. And so I had a chance to visit with Ed Gentile today. I also had an hour-long meeting with John Vaccaro here in the office last week where we talked about that. September is a big month for Heights Crossing. So they have a number of businesses that are going to be opening up. The Goddard School, which is actually about 40% of the ground floor space at Heights Crossing. They are all set for start on September 1st and starting, I think, with 154 kids is their capacity. And I believe a lot of those spaces are already taken. So I'm actually going to meet with the owner of the franchise just to welcome them to Darien and thank them for having confidence in our fair town. But it's great to have a big anchor tenant like that in such an important new development. So kudos to them. Heights Liquor is also going to be opening in September, as is I think Sharky's, which is the kids' haircut place, and a gym franchise is also going to be there. We've got a couple others that I know folks have been wondering about. One of them is Chipotle. They have a building permit, but have not moved forward on their space yet. Milkshake Factory is another franchisee that's moving in, and all of them are getting started to get built out. They have their permits in place. They started to occupy apartments as of July 1st. So you've probably seen some residents maybe walking around the complex, but they have leased a lot of their spaces there, and occupancy has now been in place for just under 2 months. So a great start over there. I'm going to try to go meet all the business owners as they open up and just welcome them to Darien. I love to see these developments and all the new businesses. So please stop by when you see them open and patronize those places. As far as paving and stoplights and all that, the new technology has been installed on the stoplights in front of the old Avalon complex there, as well as at Heights Road and Hollow Tree Ridge, as well as West Road and Hollow Tree Ridge. So the new signals are there. I think Ed says they need to do one more iteration in terms of stoplight timing to make sure that's in good shape. As far as paving, they're not quite ready to do that yet, just because of some construction and other things. They don't want to tear up the pavement. Ed's view is that that would get done next spring. So look to have all that paving completely done by then. The other thing to consider is that the Vaccaros also bought the old Epi computer building, those buildings that are basically between Palmer's and Leary's liquor store. That's right there at Edgerton. They've bought all three of those buildings, and they'll be presenting some proposals to planning and zoning soon. But that construction could also tear up Heights Road. So that's something they're also mindful of. But paving will be last, but when it's done, that whole area will look pretty sharp. So that is the Norton Heights and Heights Crossing update. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Burke?
Yes, John, I wonder if, as that opens, since the other work won't be done into the spring, perhaps our police department can keep an eye on the traffic there. There may be a period of time where the assistance of some people during peak times in terms of managing that traffic flow, perhaps someone signaling traffic might be useful. Let's at least keep an eye on it, because I think it's going to be a significant new traffic event once all of those businesses, come online.
That is a fantastic suggestion. I will contact the chief about that. That's a great idea. We should be proactive on that. I'm hopeful the new signals will solve a lot of that, but it's something we ought to monitor and try to be proactive on. I appreciate that. Good idea. Other thoughts? Okay. All right. That is that for old business. All right. We've got a couple of topics to talk about on Great Island. The first one is really the only one for decision tonight, and that's to discuss and take action to accept the Great Island Master Plan. I use the word accept pretty specifically here. I think what our charge is now that the Great Island Committee has completed its work and they have voted to recommend the master plan that they developed jointly with Reed Hilderbrand, it really is up to the Board of Selectmen now to take that plan that's been recommended to us and start to pull it apart and come to some specific decisions about where we want to go forward, at what dollar amount, and at what pace. And really, it's the Board of Selectmen's role to make those decisions. And so I think our first step is to simply accept the plan from the Great Island Committee and then start to own it in terms of the decisions that need to be made with regard to where we're going to invest and how much we're going to invest, and then to send those decisions for approval to the Board of Finance and to the representative town meeting. As I said before, I'll be doing a lot of work on communication with regard to these investments, but that's more to come on that. So, Monica, do you have any thoughts you'd like to add on the master plan that we will vote to accept?
Well, I think that it was a tremendous amount of work from Reed Hilderbrand and from the committee, over a year worth of work, right? 4 community sessions, 3 community surveys, focus groups with individuals, focus groups with company, with community organizations. They met with town staff. So all of that is to say that there's a lot of input that was taken into consideration when this was created. And I think it's a really good blueprint for us for not only the next early access and building stabilization phase, but going forward for our community for years to come. So I personally am very appreciative of the work from both Reed Hilderbrand and the committee.
Terrific. Other comments? Mike?
I would just echo what Monica said. I mean, I think it's a superior work product. There was careful consideration given to all of the ideas that are contained within the document, and I look forward to implementing the plan where we can and in the way that makes most sense for the town. But I think the questions of what the potentials are of that island are all in that document, and I think it's up to the elected officials and other governing bodies that may be developed to implement the plan as we see fit. So thank you.
Marcy or Sarah? Okay. Just to talk a little bit about the decision making on all this. So even though we're voting to accept the plan tonight, that really is meant as a kickoff of a process about communicating this to all the relevant parties. So what we'll do on September 8th, which is our next meeting, is we'll vote on a number of things, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But as part of all that, we're going to start a communication process to make sure the relevant folks on the Board of Finance and RTM are kept apprised. I'd like to have a special public session with the RTM to really present the structure or outline of what we're hoping to accomplish, particularly with regard to early appropriations. And I'll be drafting all of that for you all to take a look at, which we'll do publicly at our September 8th meeting. And then hopefully that we can get that presented to the RTM at a special meeting after that, as well as to the committees if they require it. But I will be out in front on this and actively communicate all that as much as I possibly can. So let's go ahead and take this vote. Could I get a vote to accept the Great Island Master Plan? Okay, Mike moves. Monica seconds. All in favor? Okay, thank you. All right, so the next topic to discuss for Great Island is the formation of a building committee. Again, we're not going to vote or decide any of that tonight, but I kind of wanted to get everybody's sense of what we should be doing on that. As discussed, the Great Island Committee itself is no more, but at some point, we're going to need to appoint a building committee for the investments that we're going to make with construction on Great Island. Now, the question is when would we do that, and how do we pick membership for that committee? Unlike the Great Island Advisory Committee, this committee is really going to be about execution as opposed to deciding what to do. That's really going to be the Board of Selectmen. So in our coming debates, we'll make some choices about where we want to make investments. It'll be up to the building committee to work with our consultants, come up with technical drawings and documents, bid documents, and to work with contractors once they're selected to execute the decisions that the Board of Selectmen comes up with. But as you know from the Oxford School Building Committee experience, those guys were formed when the architect was selected, and they went through a process of interviewing architects. And so there's a fair bit of work that an earlier building committee could get engaged in. Let me stop there and see if anybody has any comments or input with regard to a decision about a building committee. Sarah.
John, I think if you're going to put together a building committee, I think it's going to need to follow kind of the pattern that we've had with the building committees in this town. I think to do it differently would alert people, I think, negatively. I think if we follow the process that we've had with the Oxford Building Committee, the HHR Building Committee, the town garage, there's so many things that we've done, but I think we should have someone from Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and so forth going forward. I think you should find some phenomenal folks from our town. I know that some have also served in this past Great Island committee iteration, but I think we should follow those guidelines.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. Other comments?
So sorry, Monica. I agree completely. I think next steps for Board of Selectmen should really be to create a timeline on now being passed, this plan. There's a lot of activities that we have in mind that we want to do, and we want to make sure that we keep things prioritized in a timeline. There's many agenda items tonight that we're going to be looking at that I think all require a certain amount of timeline to go along with that. And I think that's Board of Selectmen's job to create that for town. Putting a building committee together at this point, I agree with Sarah. I think it needs to hit all of the structure that we have had in the past of every single building committee, but I don't foresee that as a timeline that we have just yet. I think it's important that the parking happens on the island. I think it's important that public has more access to it in its raw state before we go ahead and start to kind of consider what priorities are of building and executing new concepts on the island. So I would love, as this group, the 5 of us, to get together and prioritize what our timeline looks like. Where do we see this? How long do we see this going to take? That way we don't create a building committee that doesn't really have a project yet, or we're really not sure what the skills are going to be needed for that particular project until we've decided how we're going to fund it, what's the priority, what's the number one building that we want to do. And I think town needs to input that.
Terrific. Monica or Mike?
Go ahead, Mike.
I feel that in the past, we've formed these committees once we've made a determination on a project. I know that Great Island is different or distinct from any other piece of property that we've had before. So I'm happy to keep an open mind in terms of timing for the formation of a building committee, but I think I'd like to hear more on what the benefits would be of forming a building committee now.
Got it. Okay. Monica.
Well, I think we're going to talk about why we might need a building committee sooner rather than later in one of the next items. But I think when I think of the building committee, I totally agree with Sarah that we would follow the model that we've used successfully in the past, right? With a BOS and a BOF representative. But I would also ask that we really fine tune the requirements. What are we looking for from our non elected officials on this, and make sure that we're pretty specific, because if you remember, we had, I think it was 44 people that interviewed for being on GIAC, and that's fantastic, right? But I think recognizing that we need to button down a little bit more what we're looking for from the applicants in the first place, I think would be helpful.
Okay. All right, well, we'll continue this discussion on the building committee, again, just in the sense of keeping that in reserve, so we're ready to go when we need it. But I agree very much with Sarah's comment about process and trying to adhere to the formation criteria that we had in place for other committees. And I thought, Marcy, particularly your points are good about our overall timeline. That's going to be a key feature of what I want to try to communicate in the next week or so to folks about the overall project. And I think once that's done and people can get their minds around it, I think hopefully a committee formation will slot in at a logical spot. Okay. Next up is to talk about the Great Island event policy. Monica, you want to kick that off at all?
Sure. So I think that we've had, especially the GIAC members, we have received a lot of requests, right, for different events. And some of the events are from community groups, whether it's a road race or the nature center wanting to have kids down there for a class, or outdoor painting, or no, we've had a number of things, right? And of course, we've had the weddings there. So I think the GIAC committee took a couple of first steps on this as far as what we thought could work in both the near term and the longer term. I personally think that while the work on 23A is going on, that it's while we should take a look at an event policy, I do think that we are restricting access to our residents already. And so having events that restrict access even more while that's going on is, I think it's something we should consider.
Other comments? Sarah?
I don't think the island is ready to have an event with hundreds of people. I could be way off. There's no parking, there's no bathroom facilities, there's no water. If you have a road race, if you have an event, I don't see that island is ready. I could be way off, but please let me know your thoughts, folks.
Yeah, what I tried to do was to take the draft policy or kind of comments about how we would set up a policy and create that one pager. It's interesting to reflect on a couple of points. I think some of the public comments tonight hit on a big one, which is, as we all know, right now it's zoned for residential. And so if there are any events, they've got to be discussed and especially permitted by planning and zoning for each one. We will hopefully change our zoning at some point, and more to come on that discussion. But right now, that's a constraint that we have. It's one we can overcome by submitting applications to planning and zoning, but it's a cumbersome process because they would have to do that approval. That said, I also thought the other comment about weddings versus receptions, if I could summarize that, was also a good one, and one I certainly have discussed with a few others. As the caller pointed out, you can have a wedding and photography down at Pear Tree Point. It's all very nice. And then the assembled adjourn to another venue for the reception, where people are going to want to let go a little bit once the wedding's finished. And I think if you were to put that in the context of what we might want to eventually do on Great Island, where maybe there's a quiet wedding with nice pictures out there, but the reception itself, where everybody wants to cut loose, is actually held at a different venue. And we might actually consider that as maybe an overall approach to all this. But Sarah raises a good point. As we all know, as Monica said, we've got construction on 23A, which is going to take a while to complete, at least the road part, until year end. And in addition, we're going to have other construction that's going to start sometime in the spring. So it's going to be a while before, Sarah points out, we're really going to have the infrastructure in place in terms of water and power and bathroom facilities. And not only that, but just access for emergency services and sign off from our insurance carriers that all this is fine. And of course, it has to be ADA compliant. And so there's just a lot of wood to chop to get here. And as I think I mentioned before, until we get a lot of these things straightened out, it really is premature to start saying yes to folks, particularly the ones who want to do weddings, because they need to start their planning right now. in order to do a wedding next summer. I just think, unfortunately, we're not going to be in a position to know whether the island's going to be ready for any of this next summer. So I think my recommendation, and I'll touch on this in a video we're going to try to get shot next week about Great Island events, but we just need to make the point clear that we are simply not ready for this. Comments, reactions, Mike?
I agree in terms of, the timing of having these events are a bit, far off perhaps, but I think there's also benefit in starting to talk about the broad strokes of a policy to have in place at such time that there is greater access, because there are some value decisions inside of this, these discussion points that you've put up here, John. And I think that you may take a little bit of time and thought to finalize. So there may really be benefit in starting to talk about them now.
Yeah, I have a, in my newsletter this Friday, what I'd like to do is just send out this one pager. It's just a digestible summary of all the policy points. Stick that in the newsletter. And if folks have got suggestions on that, I get the whole zoning point. We got to sort that out. I get the infrastructure, and we do need to get that sorted out as well. But having public comment on any aspect of our draft discussion points here, I think would be great. And let us know what you think.
Just to add to that, I think it's in the town's best interest to also have some town-sponsored events to kind of get an understanding of the flow of how things work on that island. Nothing has been done on that island that public has had access to. And I think if the town had the ability to sort of do an event, we'll understand traffic flow, we'll understand the hiccups, we'll understand movement on the island, so that we're better prepared to create an event policy that really helps with the hiccups that we may find. You go to any wedding venue, you try to rent out any hall, put a tent up on any winery or vineyard, they have certain vendors that they'll use. They'll have only certain porta potty companies that you use. They have so many restrictions because they want to preserve their land. And I think that's our goal as well, to make sure that, any of the retailers that come on there are going to be, just as cognizant of the island and how precious it is to us. I think it's important as a town that if we control that for maybe next summer and have the ability to say, this is what works here, this is what doesn't work. Oh, there's not enough bathrooms, there's not enough water, there is too much, there's plenty. We'll be better off creating a policy that fits best for that space than if we just hand it to the public to start to use it before we've really tested the waters there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's interesting to kind of split events into events that members of the public would come to us and ask to schedule and manage themselves, versus an event that the town would come in and schedule, much like Parks and Rec does at Tilly Pond or other park facilities in town, where they come out and set up something like the upcoming luau thing later this month. That way it's controlled by the town. And if we were to try one or two of those events at some point when the infrastructure allows us to, it gives us a chance to, as I've said many times, run a few event experiments and see what happens. What could we do that's not overly destructive, not overly disturbing to neighbors, but still allows the town to enjoy the property, as long as we're ready to do it, to kind of build on what Sarah was saying. Maybe that's the way to start doing that. Other comments, Monica?
I think, Marcy, that's a really good idea. We'll say, though, that we did have some town-sponsored, theoretically, right? Because we had the Reed Hilderbrand community sessions on the island. And we also did a tour, and Linda and Karen helped. It was a big lift as far as scheduling the buses goes. But so you know what, I think I'll work with John and come up with kind of what worked there and what didn't. And we do have a little bit of history without having another formal event. So I just want to put that in your thoughts.
But it is a good point that Marcy raises, which is maybe we start to work to come up with something that the town could sponsor on the island, again, when the infrastructure will bear it, and try to get that done as soon as practicable, to use a word.
Practical, good.
Okay. All right, we will continue the discussion on events in the future. That last thing on Great Island is to discuss a proposal for design and other professional services by Reed Hilderbrand for the next phase of Great Island. As everyone knows, they were the consultant that helped us with the development of the master plan. And we would like to entertain a discussion with them about their help for this next phase. And one of the things I wanted to just point out is the nature of the help that they would be providing. So in the first phase, where we developed the master plan, Reed Hilderbrand was all over the public and the communication part of this, right? They spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours engaging with the public, engaging with the Great Island Committee, leading presentations of what they were thinking in terms of summarized results and initial plans, all of that. It was a very communication intensive effort on their part. In this next phase, their role changes completely. They are not going to be involved in communication with the public per se. That's something that I and the rest of us will be responsible for, but rather their role is going to be more technical in nature. Because even though we have a master plan, as we develop the timeline for the investments we want to make, somebody's going to need to do quite a bit of technical work to translate the overall plans into things like detailed architectural renderings or detailed plans with regard to really the execution of all these different projects for example, from the design specifications to our welcome center and bathroom facilities to just the roads and parking, all needs to be designed with a fair degree of precision. And then all of that work needs to be translated into bid documents that we can provide to contractors for them to bid on this work. We've had engineers do that kind of work for the town in the past. Reed Hilderbrand, this is an expertise for them. And I think it's important for them to continue working with us because they understand the master plan and will be the, I think, quickest and most efficient at helping us get this technical work done in this next phase. So we'll be going through a more detailed proposal from them at our next meeting, and I'll make sure everybody has that in advance of that discussion. But I just wanted to characterize briefly the significant role change that Reed Hilderbrand will have in this next phase of work. I know Jennifer has spent some time thinking about this plan as well, and this might be a good time for you to chime in, Jennifer, talk a little bit about that, and also maybe summarize your discussion with Ed about maybe some of his involvement from an engineering standpoint on all of our contracts and proposals for Great Island.
Sure. I think with it moving from GIAC to more of a traditional town project, there will be a lot more involvement by Public Works. And Ed and I met today and we were discussing, Ed really picks up and runs with it at the point that we have construction drawings, we're ready to go out to bid. He will be reviewing everything up to that point, and his commitment or his words were along the lines of like, I can build anything, but I want to make sure that what is put together in design drawings and bid specs is buildable. So he's going to be involved throughout the design process. I'll be involved with that as well. So I think we're going to be moving to more town oversight and management of the actual implementation of these things. But talking to Ed, so he really picks up and begins his work once we have the design drawings and bid it out. We have the conceptual master plan, and in between we have this gap where once the Board of Selectmen decides you want to put in parking and building stabilization or whatever the other elements are that you want to focus on now, we need to cover this gap between what was in the concept and get to the design drawings. And I do think this goes back a bit to the building committee discussion, and I see a role for them in that in-between period, as well as once the construction is underway. There's still a lot of decisions to be made on specific design elements, materials to be used, what makes sense in that environment, what makes sense from a cost perspective, what makes sense from an aesthetic perspective, from a sustainability perspective. So there's a lot of decisions to be made during the design time that I think the building committee would play an important role in. So I would advocate for establishing a building committee sooner, but along with that would be town involvement by town administration and DPW.
Comments, questions, reactions, anything else on this? Okay. All right, so more to come on.
Yeah, no, I totally understand
Sorry,
that
go ahead.
in my industry. Sorry. Often you'll get, blueprints from an engineer who's never really machined anything in their life. And it's the same concept, right? We might get a whole concept of a building plan without having DPW involved in it. You're not really sure if they can actually build it.
Right.
So I agree. I totally understand that. And I appreciate Ed for being honest about that concern. But I still believe that a building committee needs to have a mission or something that they need to, have.
They need to know what they're working on.
They need to know what they're working on, and we need to know that the right crew is being put on that, right? Because there are many different buildings with many different needs on that island. And I think each building may need a different type of building commission or a different building committee, depending on the skill set that's for that project. So once we decide, as I said before, a timeline of where our priorities are and what our first project is going to be, then I think going forward with putting together a building committee that has the right people on it is definitely in the works. It needs to be done.
Terrific, thank you. Other comments on our next phase with Reed Hilderbrand? Anything else? Okay. All right, thank you all for that. That'll wrap up the Great Island discussion. We have a number of transfers to go through. I will hand that over to Jennifer.
All right. I think these are all year end. So this is our typical August time and usually a little bleed over into September where we're just cleaning up accounts. So several from Public Works, which is not unusual. A lot of times Ed knows that he's going to be going over in a particular line, but he holds back elsewhere and he manages his budget and knows where he can find it from. And we manage it that way rather than coming to you multiple times with a transfer requests. So these are all year end. And then there's one for the registrars of voters related to, planning and zoning relating to consulting services. So on the first one, the request is for a transfer of $27,999 to the DPW motorized equipment repair account, coming from several other accounts within their department. There was an increase in equipment and vehicle repairs, and they had to use an outside repair facility on multiple occasions, which drove up the cost.
Questions on this transfer? Okay, could I get a motion to approve a request to transfer $27,999 to Public Works motorized equipment repair and recommend same to the Board of Finance? Sarah moves. Monica seconds. All in favor? Okay, great. Thank you. All right.
Next one is $7,512 also for DPW to the garage facility repair and maintenance account. There were additional costs to maintain the garage, repair of the roof over the east bays, and some repairs to the on-site fire hydrant.
I see, by the way, that Mike Burke has dropped out of the meeting. Is he now, and maybe he's on his phone or whatever, is he? He's got his hand raised. Is that?
Thank you. I will add him back as a panelist.
Thank you.
There's no running away, Mike.
Yeah, no, know where you live. Okay. So Question on this. Go ahead, Jennifer. Question on this transfer.
This was the 7,512 for the garage repair facility for some unexpected repairs on the roof and the on-site fire hydrant.
Okay, questions on this? Okay, motion to approve a transfer of $7,512 to Public Works Facility Repair and Maintenance Garage and recommend same to the Board of Finance. Mike moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor? Okay. All right, next.
Sticking with the Public Works theme, a transfer of $16,197 to the overtime account for town buildings. They had to cover the some longer term absence of 2 of their custodians who were out on extended leave.
Okay, questions? Okay, could I get a motion to approve a transfer of $16,197 to Public Works overtime and recommend same to the Board of Finance? Okay, Mike moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor? All right, next.
$18,537 to the town buildings facility repair and maintenance. And a lot of this is related to some AC problems that we had at Town Hall. There was a repair to one of the rooftop AC units, fan rentals because it was horribly hot in there, and the acquisition of a portable 5-ton AC. We do expect that we'll be seeing a capital request for AC repairs at Town Hall in the next budget.
How come air conditioning only fails in the summer? It should fail in the winter when it's not really that hot. Anyway, Sarah.
I just had a quick question. Jen, can you help me understand why we're transferring money from one account line to the same account line? Is there a sub account that I'm missing?
Yeah, they have separate divisions. So in the from account, when you look at the account number, the 1040801, that's their parking division. And then the to account, the 1040711
Okay,
is
it's
from
not the
building.
same. I was looking at the last several. Okay, got it. Thank you. Sorry.
You're welcome.
Good question. Mike. You're on mute.
I imagine we checked to make sure that these repairs or this work weren't subject to any warranty claims or anything like that.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? Could I get a motion to approve the transfer of $18,537 to Public Works Facility Repair and Maintenance and recommend same to the Board of Finance? Mike moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor? Okay, thanks. Okay, next.
$24,771 to the town buildings electricity account. This is also related to our AC issues. So there was a need to provide constant airflow throughout the building, and future modification of this should help with the HVAC balancing.
Okay, questions? Okay, can I get a motion to approve a transfer of $24,771 to the Public Works electricity line item and to recommend same to the Board of Finance? Mike moves. Monica seconds, all in favor? Okay. Next.
$30,356 to DPW professional services. This is one that we see almost every year. We charge the credit card services against their professional services account because of the way that we are charged for them. So there was a deficit at year end because of a significant increase in credit card charges. And this is specifically for the transfer station.
And these are bank charges for the use of credit cards, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I guess my only comment on that is we've had a number of questions come up now for years, even since I was on the Board of Finance, which is what do we do about the cost of credit card transactions? I'll reiterate my recommendation on that is that at some point what we ought to do is take all these services that are available to be procured with credit cards, add 5%, just boost the costs one time to permanently cover credit card fees, and then to forget about this topic. Because once we put in a charge like that, anytime we raise fees in the future, they'll be raised on top of this charge. And so it would permanently cover the cost of credit card transactions, and we don't have to make an explicit separate charge or something like that. We don't have to decide that now, but I just want to put that as a placeholder in everybody's minds as a potential way to address this. Sarah.
I know when I pay some of my fees in the Darien town site, there's a convenience fee that's added. We are going to be putting the site on one platform at some point. Yes, no, and because I know there's 17 different
Yes.
platforms and some have fees, some have don't. Like, we need to do a better job about charging where we need to.
Well, that's a great point. And since we want to kind of migrate everybody to using a single app that's either web-based or even on your phone to pay for stuff like this, to have an integrated approach, and my preferred approach, subject to a lot of agreement, but would be to simply layer in a single price increase to cover all these types of fees and just charge one price. You can pay for it however you want to pay for it. There's one price. And we've built in a charge to cover our town's costs for these fees. But yes, we do it consistently. Monica.
Hey, Jen, going back to this one, was the volume up or was there a bump in cost?
The volume was up. I'm trying to remember the timing, but we recently, I forget if it was at the very end of last fiscal year or mid fiscal 25, we started having the commercial haulers be able to pay by credit card. So those are much higher dollar amounts, and it did increase the volume as well. And so it's also kind of also related to the next transfer, which is where we're consistently chasing our transfer station costs. We're making a lot more money on it, but it does come with an increase on the expense side too. And this is somewhat related to that.
Got it.
Okay. Could I get a motion to approve a transfer of $30,356 to the Public Works Professional Services line item and recommend same to the Board of Finance? Sarah moves, Mike seconds, all in favor? Okay. All right, next.
So the next one is $220,785 to the Solid Waste Disposal Services. This is the only one that DPW had they couldn't cover internally. So they're requesting $65,929 be moved from the contingency account. The balance of it they can cover internally. But this is where we can send, even though we've raised our tipping fee, we continue to see increases in the amount of MSW that's brought into the transfer station by private haulers. In fiscal year 25 is approximately another 10% increase in municipal solid waste. So that does produce additional revenue, but we also have to pay to have it hauled out. The additional revenue was approximately $365,000 above budget, and the expense side is about $220,000.
But it's clear that the revenue we're charging for this more than makes up for the incremental cost of the waste, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Questions, comments on this? Yeah, only one for me is, can you just re-explain why the overage is routed through the Board of Finance contingency as opposed to being offset by revenue, something like that?
Because we can only transfer within the expenditure side. We can't transfer revenue to expense. That can only be done by an appropriation to both sides.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, can I get a motion to approve a transfer of $220,785 to Public Works Solid Waste Disposal Services and recommend same to the Board of Finance? Sarah moves. Monica seconds, all in favor? Okay. And last but not least.
Final one is $21,977 in the Planning and Zoning Department to consulting services. They're able to cover a little over, just under $9,000 from their full-time salary account because they had some transition in positions. But the balance of just over $13,000 they are requesting to move from contingency. They do sometimes have to farm out jobs to outside consultants for peer review and engineering services. This year that was more than anticipated, but each application through the application fee helps to offset this.
Okay, so it wasn't for any particular project?
No, it wasn't one particular project. It was throughout the year.
Okay. Questions on this? All right, could I get a motion to approve a transfer of $21,977 to Planning and Zoning Consulting Services and recommend the same to the Board of Finance? Monica moves, Mike seconds, all in favor? Okay, great. All right, a few appointments for us to cover this evening. The first one is to reappoint Peter Bigelow. I'd like a motion to reappoint him to the Darien Housing Authority for a term expiring on June 30th, 2027. He has the recommendation of the Darien Democratic Town Committee. Any questions? Okay, could I get a motion to approve his reappointment? Okay, Sarah moves, Mike seconds, all in favor? Okay, great. The next one is for Joe Warren. Before we get to that, I had a good discussion with Joe. As everyone knows, he chaired the Darien Housing Authority for a very long time. Joe is going to remain on the Housing Authority. He really has a wealth of information, but he is going to step down as chairman. And Peter Bigelow either has or will shortly assume chairmanship of the Darien Housing Authority. Anyway, I know both these gentlemen, and I thank them for their service. I just want to do a special shout out to Joe Warren for his many years of just being everything in the town of Darien, and this obviously being an important one. His service as chair of the Darien Housing Authority, and I appreciate his willingness to stay on as a member to help Peter and our new appointee, Fred Conzi, in their work on this important authority. So thank you to Joe Warren. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad you're staying on the authority. So could I get a motion to reappoint Joe Warren to the Darien Housing Authority for a term expiring June 30th, 2026? Mike moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor? Great, thank you. Okay. And per our interviews this evening, could I have a motion to appoint Peter Reardon to the Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters for a term expiring December 31st, 2025? Okay, Monica moves, Mike seconds, all in favor? And could I also have a motion to appoint Peter Reardon to the Darien TV Advisory Board for a term expiring on December 31st, 2025? Okay, Mike moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor? Okay. And there's one other appointment we need to do. I don't know if we need to do a new business on this. Jennifer, you'll advise me, but we need to appoint Dennis Maroney. He is a member of the Darien Board of Education, and we need to appoint him to replace Jill McCammon on the HHR, Hindley Homes and Royal Building Committee. Jill is stepping down from the Board of Education after the elections in November, and we will celebrate her service in due course, but getting Dennis appointed and in place so that he can start to get up to speed. So when Jill does formally step down, he's ready to go on HHR. Sarah, you obviously know about this unless you had any other comment.
No comment. We've already kind of welcomed Dennis, and I didn't know
Right.
if we needed to do a formal appointment. But yeah.
Yeah, we do need to do a formal appointment since that committee is actually, even though it's for schools, it's technically a Board of Selectmen building committee. So
Well, we welcome Dennis. Thank you.
Jennifer, comments, and do we need to vote to add this as new business?
Yep, you'll have to do a vote to add it and then take the vote on the item.
Okay, so two quick votes. First of all, could I have a motion to add as new business the appointment of Dennis Maroney to the HHR Building Committee? Sarah
So
moves. Mike seconds, all in favor? Okay, so we've added that as new business. And then finally, could I get I guess we don't have terms for that, so that's fine. Could I get a motion to approve the appointment of Dennis Maroney to the Hindley Homes and Royal Building Committee pending the resignation of Jill McCammon? Sarah moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor? Okay, great. All right, that wraps up all our appointments. I've had a chance to read through the minutes from our August 4th regular meeting. They all look good to me. I didn't have any edits. Does anyone have any corrections or changes to the minutes? Okay, could I get a motion to approve the minutes for the August 4th regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen? Okay, Sarah moves, Mike seconds, all in favor? Okay. Agenda review. We've got Heights Crossing and Norton Heights off the agenda. We still have on there yard signs policy and enforcement. Sarah, I'll get back to you on that. And then an update on the left turn lane in Roden Avenue and Ledge Road. Jennifer and I are working on that and had a meeting about it 2 weeks ago. I hope to have something to report soon, but we are making progress. Does anyone else have anything to add for agenda review? Okay. All right. And then, as I said from last time, I will add as an agenda item what we want to do about Zoom versus in-person meetings. But our upcoming meetings, Board of Selectmen, will be in person now that we're done with the summer just about. And this will be in room 206, and that'll be Monday, September 8th. And then tentatively right now, we have our following meeting, which will be September 29th, and that will be a Zoom meeting. So I believe that's it for our agenda. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, friends. Thank you very much. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Okay. Mike moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor. Great. We stand adjourned. Thank you, folks.